Hi there, and welcome to the first ever podcast of Set 3 and Pass. My name is Bit,
And I'm Kat.
and we're going to introduce our channel today. We're going to talk a bit about why we've made it, what we're all about, and Kat is going to talk about a recent locals experience that he went to. So we're going to begin with our introduction. So I'll pass it over to Kat if you just want to do a quick intro, and yeah.
Yeah, so just as a quick disclaimer to everyone, if you're expecting a podcast talking about the highly competitive nature of Yugi, you're not really come to the right place. We are literally two guys that have just come back to the physical card game after taking a hiatus of 16, nearly 16 years, actually 15 years. Finishing in 2006. So we stopped playing after the Monarchs took over the UK Nationals. But we started basically back in 2002 and went through all the transitions there. So we've had a little bit of history. Stopped basically because of finance, life, basically, and then getting into other TCGs because at the time we thought Yu-Gi-Oh was dying, which we were proven incorrect. What about yourself, Bit?
Yeah, so I think it was a strange time in my life because I really enjoyed Yugi, but I was going off to university, and yeah, life changed a lot. And yeah, same reason. We just stopped playing it after that, and yeah, came back because of the lockdown that everyone's under. I made the foolish mistake of actually watching the anime again, the Duel Masters one. So when they went into Duelist Kingdom with Pegasus and everyone, and then I made the even stupider mistake of buying a card on eBay for cheap, and it just snowballed from there. What about you, Kat? What brought you
Yeah.
back?
Well, I've continued to buy cards throughout. So one of the things I did when I was playing originally was I always collected Dark Magician cards. Probably made a mistake of Dark Magician rather than Blue Eyes, looking at the prices now. But I continue to keep buying the cards, which have actually been proven to be correct to do that because value has gone up. So that's been a big plus. But same, I continue to go back to the series. I also, because of the fact I played other TCGs, some of my friends who were playing that still continue to play Yugi, so I heard the stories. I heard about the dad format, which sounded ridiculously fun. Let's be honest, it wasn't. And continue to watch the anime, as Bit said, watch all the new ones, try to keep up. And then PS4 and PS3 games also then continue to keep me engaged. And then a year and a half ago, we decided, oh, let's give this a little bit more of a thought, and we decided to start buying cards at the beginning of this year to come back, as most people did during lockdown. So we're just coming out of the pandemic, as everyone knows, and we thought, oh, we'll give this a go. And then get back to actually playing physical card games, because I think both of us have agreed we've missed that.
Yeah, I just jump in very quickly. I'd agree. I think I've missed the feel of the physical card game. I know we've sort of played online, and it's not the same. I mean, would you agree?
Well, when we're sitting there and we're having to read the thing over and over again, I think one of the things we'll probably go into more detail about our experience coming back, but the sheer amount of text. But I think learning online has actually been good because it's given us the general idea, but I think it kind of babysits you. And I think I'll get into a bit more detail about how the babysitting of the online system actually didn't really help me for the physical card game itself. But yeah, I agree. There's nothing like getting in front of a person and experiencing it firsthand.
No, no, that's great. So, okay, so I will go into why I could not go to a locals because I know you've been to a locals very soon. It's because in my area where I live, there are some places, however, they're not opening just yet. But where we are in the UK, we're opening up on the 19th, which is, I think, about a week, 2 weeks from now. So hopefully everything will be reopened. But you had the opportunity to actually go to a local. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so well, as we're recording this, it's the 11th of July, so we're still in the period where there's social distance and so on. So I went to an event yesterday in Newport, which was interesting. The store was amazing. It was nice going to a store again. Had the whole floor, but the surreal part of it is as you're going upstairs and you're having to social distance, go up there to fill in a disclaimer form to say, have you had any symptoms? They then tell you, here's your seat number. And literally, if you imagine you're going into a hospital where you're separated around and the chairs were placed around the room, mine was behind the wall, and they went, this is your seat number, go to that seat. This seat and it's the only seat there was my seat for the day. So whenever I moved to another table, I had to move my chair back and forth. So that was interesting. Um, but yeah, like I say, I went in, played a few games. So I went with my Magistus Shadol deck, which I've done a profile for, and even the night before, I made a few changes. Had no expectations. Expected to hopefully not embarrass myself, which I think I did. But going into there, I had no real high expectations, but was looking forward to a few games. So yeah,
So yeah, sorry, Kat. So if I could just jump in, so what made you gravitate towards Shadol? I mean, we we are two people that have just come back into the game, and I'm struggling with my deck choices at the moment. What made you gravitate towards Shadol?
well, I guess in terms from my perspective, when I picked up the PS3, I want to say it's Legacy of Duelists or something like that. But the main deck at the time was Shadol, and although at the time I believe in the TCG was the broken deck to have, but from my perspective, it allowed you to play numerous stages of the game. So you had the fusion elements, you had the ability to play traps, your extra deck, as mentioned before, effects, which also took effect on the field and also then in the graveyard, or the GYs, then they called it, as well. But then with the new cards that came out, it also had the ability to fuse from the graveyards and send out a play, and then with links and so on like that, there was loads of combos. It seemed more my up to speed because I used to play spellcasters as well, and it gave you the ability to do that. It was just one I gravitated to, and I think I watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and they said, "What's the budget options?" Because, well, when we came back, it was invoked Dogmatica, which unfortunately my budget couldn't go to that extent. So that's why I kind of gravitated towards that. Although, don't get me wrong, the night before I've built up a number of decks, not hyper competitive,
Yeah.
and I had to make that decision basically, and that's the one I picked.
So I think for everyone that's listening, or just as an introduction to our channel, this is a budget sort of channel. We're not going to, like you said, we're not going to start posting decks with like three times dogmatic of every card just because we're trying to get back in and sort of easing the pain on our wallets at the same time. But yeah, no, thank you. So okay, so they made you sit in a chair, which is, yeah, I agree, it's weird. So and then what happened?
So yeah, then you got your matches. So over the course of the day, there was 4 different matches. There was 14 people in total. And then it was the same standard. So they were 40-minute games, which I think is shorter than normal, but I'm going by what I'm used to with other games, which is about an hour. But you have 40 minutes to play your game. You go into your table, and rather than being so you've got a normal table. So imagine it was, rather than being face to face, the shorter edge, you was the longer edge. So you were pretty much, if there was a light, you couldn't see the cards, which was always interesting. But the person I then sat aside from was playing Virtual Worlds, which Virtual World is a deck which I've built, but I'm still trying to learn. Walls of Text. I proceeded to basically draw my hand, and coincidentally, and I think this is more to keep on brand, I set free and passed. And
So you're repping that in real life as well. See?
but my opening hand was essentially awful. It was 2 invocations, just as invocations, I should say, Shadol Fusion, and I think it was a Beast, Schism, and Resh. So the brick is a brick hands, so I thought this is not going to be the day. And my opponent then proceeded to basically bring out a field of everything. So he brought out Crystal Wing, he then brought out Shen Shen, and then to my surprise and dismay, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which my next hand I was able to get a Shadol Fusion, which obviously got negated, and that kind of summed up game 1 essentially. Every time I seemed to do anything, I think I only played 2 face-up cards in the entire game before I actually lost 2-0 quite quickly, which I found quite amusing, but I learned quite a lot about the deck, which I'm hoping to start. But yeah, Red Eyes Dragoon, kind of both games completely killed me off. So yeah, that was kind of the summary of that, and that was in Virtual World.
It sounds like you come up against a pretty oppressive deck, which sounds like a really bad time. I mean, Dragoon is one of the cards where I suppose we both have to acknowledge we never had it before ever in our format that we played. Um, but yeah, no, that's great. So continue.
Yeah, so I can't really say much because I've got Dragoon in my deck. It's one of the ones I did invest in, so I can't really complain. But yeah, it was quite apparent that it was not going to go to plan. But the guy that I play against was good. He taught through, went through study about the combos, so I then kind of learned it. But he himself, he was learning the deck, so he wasn't playing optimally. And yeah, it was a chastening experience to coming back. The thing is, though, is then I went on to the next game, which is again Trap Tricks, and this is where the rule interaction comes into play. So for listeners, 2006, basically the interactions you usually had was summon the monster, torrential tribute, play a spell card, negate it, summon the monster to destroy. Potentially, that's about the interaction you got. You remove your cards in the field. Whereas this one, I got into, I think it was a couple of chances. He was playing Trap Tricks. He had Trap Tricks Sarah out, which essentially allows you to bring out another monster and then start setting traps. He trained a chap. I then chained Schism. He then I then brought Accolone out, which could negate Sarah, but apparently because of the fact that we've had chains work, I wasn't able to negate his Sarah until we actually resolved the effect, although I was the turn player, so I'm not sure about that, but that's what the judge said. So that was a really interesting one because we had a long old, 2-minute conversation about it, and we were joking about it, but it was interesting how that worked. For that game to end with him bringing out Zeus, which kind of killed it. So again, another OP card. And then followed up with that next game was essentially I was managed to bring out a few fusions. He then proceeded to floodgates, trap all to set them face down. Not really much I can do. And again, it was a 2-0 loss. But in that second game, he brought out Red Eyes Dragoon, which Trap Tricks, when I've played it online, I don't really think Trap Tricks and Red Eyes have that much synergy, but apparently they do. So yeah, you really can't do much about that. And one of the things I'd noticed was, apart from one of the games I played all day, they all tended to have in one of the trio in there, whether or not that was Red Eyes Dragoon, Zeus, or Access Code Talker. But I guess that's the kind of environment we're in at the moment, even with what you would deem a casual deck, which was Trap Tricks.
And I think that sort of sums up Yu-Gi-Oh as it is now. It's because I think so many people are running these quote-unquote overpowered cards where I think people who are casual are not really going to do that well. I suppose I had first-hand experience when I built my Blue Eyes deck, and I'll go through that at some point. But sometimes decks just don't have an out for something that people are playing. Okay, great. So what was the next match then?
So I play against Blue Eyes, and as we've seen from the games that we've played, Blue Eyes versus Construct always wins. But in this game, essentially, he tried to beat over Construct with his special summon Blue Eyes to realise that was the case.
How did that go?
Not well. But this is why I can't complain. I lost to the trio cards it was, because I actually won that game by playing Red Eyes Dragoon, and that's the only time I managed to summon it all day, and he couldn't overcome it, and basically that happened. And in the second game, I think he was relatively unknowing of the cards, because he summoned an amazing field of monsters, and I think the lowest attack monster he had was 2,500, which included the Synchro. He then brought out Blue Eyes Chaos Max, brought out Blue Eyes and some other cards, and then a couple of XYZ monsters, and then he proceeded to end his main phase and went Nibiru. So he was left with a nearly 1,500 attack and defense monster in defense mode, which we took a while to try and work that out, because it was just mind-boggling the amount. To my next turn summoning Construct, which Construct versus Special Summon again, destroyed. And yeah, then basically went on to win that. So that was a pretty straightforward, and we basically had a joke, because during the second game, the start of it was both of us were setting 2 and pass, and that was it for the first 2 turns. So that we went classic Yu-Gi.
Old school Yu-Gi-Oh now.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So my ones were all complete bluffs, so thankfully he was drawing into as bad a hands as you've had in the past, where you summon a whole load of level 8 monsters you can't do anything with. So Yeah, that was
Yeah.
interesting, and negating his effects to summon and draw with Ash, which happened a few times to myself. But yeah, that was interesting, and yeah, that's how that ended. And that was my first win of basically the new format in person, which was interesting.
So you could say I've prepared you for that match.
Yeah. Well, as I say, in terms of when you've got a monster, it was the only time I really managed to summon Construct all day, being my boss monster. Realised actually how good she actually is in those kind of matchups.
Well, you forget. I mean, I remember while I was doing research about just the new game, everything now is special summons, give or take.
Yeah.
People do 10 special summons that are, that's why Nibiru is so good in this format. Um, okay, right, then you had the blue eyes, and then what happened?
So then I went up against Sky Striker deck. So he was basically playing your cookie cutter version. He claims he had bad hands, but he was able to play numerous cards a turn. But a combination of aerial, removing cards from there, and then being able to bring out Winder in the first game. And he then proceeded to use Mystic Mine. And you've obviously seen how Mystic Mine works. But
Oh, yeah.
he got to the point where he was able to bring out an access code, which he then started beating over my monsters to then try and activate its effect. To me, to turn around and go, you now realise you're under Mystic Mine, not me. So he had to, obviously, Cosmic Cyclone. He had one card left. I then basically was able to get out my construct to go over access to code, and then basically went in for the first game. So that was interesting. And then the second game, looking back on it now, actually, it should have been a 2-0 because he was destroying my window via card effects. And this is one of the things which I did learn from the day, as I did with in my the second duel, which I forgot to mention. He went with access code over my Aqualone, which can't be destroyed by battle. Read the cards, because actually in that second game, if I would have remembered that actually window can't be destroyed by card effects, I would have won against the Sky Strikers with my pretty poor Shadol deck, 2-0. In the end, basically, he was able to keep destroying it via, I want to say, afterburners, is it, or something like that? But destroyed my two windows I managed to bring out with that, which shouldn't have been able to happen, and then went over basically for a game with access code for 53 when I was on 52. And the third game, basically, it went to time. I had a decent hand. I had the ability to fuse stuff out. He had a back row full. I was able to cyclone his his draw one, engage. That's the one I was thinking of. How can I forget? So he didn't have access to that, but literally had the back row full of cards which could basically remove effects. So I basically turned around and says, "This is my hand. I can do something," but he already had done 3 direct attacks to me, and I'd done nothing. So it was a case of I wasn't going to be able to do enough damage, so I conceded there. But like I say, it was my mistake because actually I lost the second game of that one by 200 life points, but which shouldn't have happened because obviously my window should never have left the field. So again, it was a good learning curve in terms of that. So I ended 3-1, but the things I came away from was the number of interactions between cards is ridiculous. Remembering that I tried to ring out Anaconda Vert were under my own window and forgetting that I was under my own effect. I had to remind him about that. So it's just the sheer amount of things you have to do, and the interaction between cards is immense. So yeah, that was the main takeaways from it.
Yeah, sorry. So, did it ever get overwhelming the amount of things that were actually going on the field compared to when we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh? Just making sure that you take note of literally everything that's going on.
Well, yeah, like I say, it's the fact that you can forget your own card's effects. So, like I say, I tried to special summon 2 monsters in my own turn when I had 2 windows on the field. When I'm only able to summon 1, that cost me in the second game, or it shouldn't have, because obviously, and then forgetting that the second line of my 5 lines of text on Windows says cannot be destroyed by card effects. It kind of makes it quite difficult. And then my opponent, who from having conversations with him has been playing back to back now for about 10 years, him forgetting that his own Mystic Mine will affect his own monsters because of the fact we're just in one of those games where you're trying to think over every single move. Those little things can be forgotten. So it's one of the things now that when you play online, the game kind of handholds you through and it says you can't do an action because it's illegal. Whereas you're doing it in person, if I was playing that online and he tried to destroy my window with a card effect, it wouldn't have happened. So it's just remembering things, and as you can imagine, being coming back to a game after so long, it's you're not used to that, especially whereas before when we used to play it was normal summon, probably potentially premature, call the haunted and so on like that to special summon. You had no extra deck. You had like 60 cards which did absolutely nothing because it wasn't of use. So that's the main thing which I've took away from it all. But in all, everyone who I went to was already friendly. It was a great experience to be there. They were all accommodating. Because of my position, although I came 12th ever over 14, which obviously is not great, I was the random number that actually got the only mat as the prize. So actually, by losing the match, I actually got a prize out of it anyway. So I've got something to take away. But definitely go back and go to other ones. But yeah, it's definitely a whole new experience again, which I really enjoyed. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, I mean just from how you describe it, I mean that's crazy that that you got randomly picked to have a Matt. I mean, and again, that's one of the new things. Can we just remind people that we did not know, and me especially, I had no idea about the mat. Like, I was quite surprised when we're like, oh yeah, the mat is one of the things that you definitely need to play Yu-Gi-Oh. So, Kat, then I know you've uploaded or you're going to upload the deck profile. Um, so, in terms of moving on from this, what are you going to change in the future then?
Well, I'll also put up a screenshot of my profile, probably hopefully while I'm speaking now as well. We'll have it on screen playing. But from my perspective, I went along to the tournament knowing that the deck I built was getting me into the game. I didn't particularly enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I enjoyed the experience, and I had the opportunity to go with my other deck, which is, well, one of my other decks, which was my Evil Twins deck, which someone else was using, and I think that moving forward I will use that for the time being while I make work on it. But I guess now it's just basically just going in, just learning the phases of the game, and I think taking a combo deck where the combo starts with one card rather than two or three, which my Magistus needs to, is the way forward, even in a casual environment. So that's the thing I've took away from it really, and that's what I'll do moving forward. And let's be honest, as we said before, we're budget players. I haven't got an unlimited amount of money to spend anyway, even if I wanted to, and I wouldn't want to anyway. So I'm just going to go along with a deck that I enjoy. I've built to play the phases, be able to complete, and go away knowing that I've actually been able to do something. Which from yesterday, the two games where I lost terribly was because of the fact in total I only able to play five or six cards face up because I was just oppressed. So yeah, that would be my next steps on there. But go to more events and hopefully do it more often, basically, now than another 15-year gap.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun when we have an event near my in my city. Hopefully at the end of July, that would be great if we can sort of give our experiences there with our updated decks. As you know, I've sort of made a Time Thief deck. Well, hearing from what you said about the Blue Eyes player, I was sort of thinking about Blue Eyes again, but I suppose that's not an option anymore. And like you said, being budget players, you have to sort of have in the back of your mind that people are going to have cards that you don't really have an out for. Would it be fair to say you can't afford an out to that card? Because at some point you can't just outplay someone who just has better hand or better deck than you, I suppose.
Well, I can't really say anything on that because actually I've gone out with my budget and spent it all on it because I've bought decks, then sold. That's my approach to it so far. Is I've bought really cheap decks to then sell it on eBay for a profit to make some money there. With the money I've made, I've been able to buy my Red Eyes package, and I've also bought a Zeus. So I can't really make complaints from that point of view. So yeah, but my dream would be to one day have the whole dogmatic kind of package and all those kind of things, but we'll see what happens when the tins come out and yeah, prosperities and so on like that. That's just not realistic. So yeah, I mean, I've completely forgot the question, but yeah, from my perspective, yeah, to outs, that's one of the things I'm going to work on. I mean, like I say, Nibiru was great, and you've got your ashes and so on like that, but that's where the sideboard comes in, and my sideboards worked reasonably well, although I it's just making sure you build that, and that's the bit where I'll work on. I had a load of cards in there that could work. I took my Dark Rulers No More out yesterday because I wanted to put in more for stun decks, because I thought that would be the case. It wasn't the case, but then you'll have a situation where you'll turn to an event where you're ready for a Dragoon, but you'll end up playing against potentially Mystic Mind burn decks, for instance, and you'll have absolutely no outs, so it's just being prepared for that to happen. But I think I'll look at things like the kaijus and those kind of things as a potential out, and look into the rules, because from what I can gather, actually, there are quite a few outs that you can do quite easily. You just got to read the cards. And that's going to be the next step, really, to be honest. And I think for any returning player, and this is what this is really based to, is if you are going to come back to the game, it is a different experience, but just get good time and the energy to actually learn the cards, and be aware that you're not going to be able to summon one card and be able to set one card, put one in attack mode and last the turn. You need to be able to have potential to combo the next turn, and that's where the combo elements of it has been the hardest struggle, basically, coming back.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kath. I think one of the major things I'm still struggling with now, and I think returning players will struggle, is just the amount of cards that they are available at the moment, and how many people play those cards. So it's definitely something that new players need to make sure they are paying attention to. It's more of a learning curve than it was last time.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you'd have Chaos Emperor Dragon, you only had one combo really, and then you just Yatalock and the game would end. But here it just feels like the game do end fast. However, there's just so much more that people do before the game ends.
Yeah, I agree. And then we'll look at different decks and think this looks amazing. Like we've looked at the Dark Magician one, I've gone, that looks amazing, but actually in reality it doesn't work. So it's, again, being aware of what your expectations are, and then any returning gamer, if you want to come back into the game and be able to compete at the highest level like you did probably when you left 10-15 years ago, just be prepared that it's going to cost you a lot financially to do so. And that's where we've had to, when I went to this event, I just wanted to enjoy myself and at least win a couple of games. I didn't win the couple of games, although I could have, but I came away with a new mat and a new appreciation. I met a group of new people, which I can go back and do again later on when I get the opportunity to do. And as we say, life is different now. We're 15 years older, low more responsibilities, but the need to, and the want to play card games is still there, and this scratches that itch. Even if I can't actually, I'm never going to be able to compete at the highest level. I just accept that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I would like to say the main difference this time around is it's more of a hobby, which is weird because this is a hobby, but now it feels much more of a hobby just because we're so restricted by our lives and the time that we have. So it's more of a fun element, but I do appreciate the competitive side of the game as well. Would you agree it's more of a hobby now than it was before, when we used to literally play to top in events?
Yes, and at the same time, I'm also more aware now that, looking back at the value of the cards that we used to have back in the day, and we don't try and dwell on it too much, is that actually looking at it as a long-term investment as well, because the game isn't going away. But yeah, I would agree in terms from the perspective of it. When I used to play probably about 3 days a week on average. Of this would include a couple of nights at the local club, and then a tournament at the weekend. And I also ran a tournament on a Sunday every couple of weeks as well. Whereas now, 15 years on, I've got a mortgage, a full-time job, family, and so on. It makes it a little bit more difficult. So expectations is I'll probably be able to go to a couple of events here and there and potentially play online against yourself and other people during the week when I get the opportunity to do so. So yeah, it's just managing that. So as I said, built a number of decks. I think this weekend's shown me that focus on one or two and just enjoy that for what it is. And if I want to build a couple, well, hopefully we'll build a couple of fun ones here and there on the budget and see how that goes. And yeah, that's what I'll take away from this. And it definitely, I enjoy the whole idea of being able to play the game, not have to play to win. And as we saw, because we've tried things like Duel Links, and we enjoyed it at the start, and when the pay-to-win element became very apparent, we kind of switched off from the game itself. And I think that's getting an environment where people are casual, with a bit of a competitive edge, and just be able to enjoy the game for what it is, rather than having to feel like if you summon the wrong monster, that's it. And I think there's a meme out there, you've chosen death So that's what I think about when I summoned a monster yesterday with a couple of traps face down where there were bluffs. You could do that back in 2006 because someone will go, is that Mirror Force? You can't do that now. So the days of setting 2 and passing are past us. It's now set 3 and pass is the way forward.
Oh, yeah, so I was just about to say, I think it's best to set three and then pass at this time around. But I'm glad you had that experience because I still have to experience that, so I'm sort of jealous in that respect. But what I will say is I 100% agree with the time and the money aspect at the moment. So hopefully we've got a couple of things lined up in the future. So I'm hoping that everyone will stay tuned for some of that stuff because we have a lot of cool stuff coming into it from a competitive and a casual point of view, I suppose.
Yeah.
So we can just round this off at the moment. I just want to say that did you say you were going to get your deck profile up? I think that'll be interesting for people to see what you actually ran with a budget.
Yep. So I'll be putting
And
that
see
up. Yeah. The budget obviously elements of it, and I won't then give budget options for the red eyes and so on like that because that doesn't there. But yeah, in terms of the deck itself, other than that, it is pretty much a deck under seven. It's under 100 quid anyway. So from perspective of a normal deck, that's reasonable. That's extra deck included. So I'll put that up. That's not a problem. And like I say, I'll show it in the background, hopefully with some footage, because we're just recording this obviously separately. I'll try and put some footage of the deck up on the background while you're listening to this. And yeah, if anyone's actually listening through this from start to end, then thank you very much for the time. As I said, this is our first time doing this, so it's going to take a bit of time for us to refine our craft here. So yeah,
not as big as a learning curve as Yu-Gi-Oh is at the moment, but it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for that. And like I say, if you got any closing remarks you want to give, bit.
Yeah, so just to close off, I'd just like to say, there's a couple of projects in the pipeline that we're going to do, so stay tuned for that. And no, I'm really jealous of what you've had to experience this week, and cannot wait to do our first locals. And hopefully we can, once the COVID is gone, not the COVID, once the restriction is lifted, we can do it together and hopefully get some footage up of our locals. That'd be great.
Yeah, and hopefully as well, we'll start getting some duels recording budgets options for people just to see what's there and make the game a little bit more accessible and fun. Hopefully that's what we're trying to show, is that if you do take a break, two of us have completely come back to it with a little bit of knowledge, see our experience, and hopefully it will encourage quite a few people to come back themselves.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be good. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so we'll close this off now. But yeah, thank you for listening to this first podcast for Set Free and Pass. I'm Kat, and yeah.
I'm Bit, and thank you for joining us today.
All right, cheers, and speak to you soon.